That pattern will include and show you that she immediately began to downplay and downright lie about her level of knowledge of her son and that weapon in that drawing on November the 30th. This pattern will continue up until the time that she and her husband are found hiding from the police in Detroit. This pattern will show you that her first instinct was to lie, her second was to run. Now, the evidence will show you that she didn't pull the trigger, but she's responsible. But there is no claim that she gifted that firearm to her son knowing he was going to commit the attack. There's no claim that she wanted him to commit the attack. So how can she be held responsible when her son pulled the trigger? And the answer is, she's not charged with murder. She's charged with involuntary manslaughter. You see, murder it's an intentional killing. Involuntary manslaughter, by definition, is unintentional. It's rooted in negligence. You've heard Judge Matthews tell you that every crime is made up of something called elements. This is no exception. You're going to learn that involuntary manslaughter is committed when someone's acts or their failures to act or their failures to perform their legal duty were grossly negligent, and that gross negligence was a cause of death. A cause of death, not the cause of death. And that's very important because, as you've heard, and you'll hear it again and again in this trial, that in a case such as this, when somebody else was a cause of death, the person who was grossly negligent can and still will be held responsible. That is, if the person who pulled the trigger, if the shooter in this case, his act was reasonably foreseeable to the defendant. To the defendant, specific to her, not to everybody else in the world, not to a stranger, not to a teacher, but to his mother, one of the two people in the world who raised him, who lived with him for 15 years, one of the two people in the world who had all the information necessary to put that drawing into context. So what's gross negligence? You will learn that it is a willful disregard of danger. Gross negligence is when you could use ordinary care, just ordinary care, to avoid a known danger, and you don't, even though it is apparent that serious injury could occur. And that's what this case is about. It's about Jennifer Crumbley's willful disregard of the danger that she knew of. That's why we're here. We're not here to talk about good parenting or bad parenting. It's not illegal to be a bad parent. We're not here to put restrictions on gun owners. That's not our job. That's not your job. That's for lawmakers. We're not here to talk about who else might be culpable or who else you think shared some blame. You will learn about the meeting on November the 30th. You may not like the fact that neither the school counselor nor the dean of students searched the school shooter's backpack. That's okay. That's okay. Because that does not mitigate Jennifer Crumbley's culpability. You're going to learn a whole lot about James Crumbley and their son. But James, he's not on trial today. He has another trial in front of another jury. Their son, his case is over. He's already been charged and convicted and sentenced for terrorism causing death and first-degree murder. Today is Jennifer's turn to stand trial, and you will evaluate the evidence as it pertains to her and her only. We're here because when Jennifer looked at this drawing, she didn't look at it the way a stranger would. When she looked at this drawing, she looked at it knowing the context and the origin. And when someone with that kind of information looks at this, the unimaginable becomes predictable. It becomes reasonably foreseeable. That's why, even though she didn't pull the trigger on November the 30th, she's responsible for those deaths. I ask that during this trial, you listen to the testimony, you review the evidence, and you follow the law. If you do that, you will undoubtedly reach a fair and just verdict. If you do that, you will find this defendant guilty as charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keys. Ms. Smith, would you like to make an opening?
I would, thank you.
Your Honor, is it okay if I just move this?
Oh, you can move it anywhere you want. There's a lot of stuff. There's cords and stuff, so
I'm
don't-
sorry,
don't
Sean,
trip.
can you just help me? I'm gonna pull it just forward,
Watch this blue cord right
and
here.
I'm gonna keep it to the side, because I don't need it.
Okay,
I just have a few notes. on it.
sure, good.
What's wrong? Sorry, Judge, just trying to get
You're good.
this. Okay. Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
On my way to court today, I blasted Taylor Swift to warm up my voice and calm my nerves. And there was a line in one of her songs that summarized what this case is about. Band-Aids don't stop bullet holes. And that's what this case is about. It's about the prosecution attempting to put a Band-Aid on problems that can't be fixed with a Band-Aid. The prosecution has charged Jennifer Crumbley with involuntary manslaughter in an effort to make the community feel better, in an effort to make people feel like someone is being held responsible, in an effort to send a message to gun owners, and none of those problems will be solved by charging Jennifer Crumbley with involuntary manslaughter. It's the same effect as when your child comes to you with a boo-boo and you give them a Band-Aid that they put on that doesn't take away the pain and can't undo what's happened to them. And in this case, a Band-Aid will never bring back the lives that were lost by Hannah, Justin, Tate, and Madison Baldwin. And the evidence in this case is absolutely horrific. Much of the evidence is going to make you sick and disgusted and scare you, traumatize you, and quite frankly, there's no reason the evidence needs to be shown. Mrs. Crumbley, myself, everyone in this courtroom agrees that on November 30th, 2021, the worst possible thing happened when Ethan Crumbley used a gun and terrorized the Oxford High School. So as you are watching the evidence, I ask you to keep in mind that much of what the prosecution is going to show you is going to alarm you and disgust you and be horrifically sad and tragic. But that evidence is about about the shooter. And in this case, we have agreed to call Jennifer Crumbley's son the shooter because he is the shooter and he is the one, as you will see from the evidence, who was responsible for the tragedy that unfolded on November 30th of 2021. Prior to November 30th, Jennifer Crumbley was the mother to a 15-year-old son, and she did not have it on her radar in any way that there was any mental disturbance, that her son would ever take a gun into a school, that her son would ever shoot people. The evidence at trial is going to show you that Jennifer Crumbley did the best she could as a mother to a child who grew up into a teenager and had no way to know what was going to happen. Jennifer Crumbley raised a son that she took to soccer practice, basketball, bowling. She's the kind of mother who, when a mole on his back changed color, a 1 millimeter mole, she took him to urgent care. She's the kind of mother who's texting her husband, who is at home, working from home. Where is Ethan? Where is Ethan? Where is Ethan? At 3:14 in the afternoon, getting texts back saying, Ethan gets home at 3:16, what's your problem? And she keeps texting, where is he? Where is he? You will see that if anything, Jennifer Crumbley was a hyper-vigilant mother who cared more about her son than anything in the world. Jennifer Crumbley is not a perfect parent, and we don't claim that she is. But what the evidence is going to show in this case is that the prosecution has very selectively pulled out slivers of evidence from a forest of trees to try to convince you that there was something wrong with Ethan and Jennifer Crumbley, as his mom, should have known. And at the end of the day, these slivers of evidence that are going to be presented to you will have no context and no explanation, and the defense will agree that on their face, it looks bad. But like any of you who look back at text messages sent a year ago, they may look bad without context and explanation. And so we would ask that you reserve any judgment on these slivers of evidence until the defense presents evidence itself, and we will be presenting evidence in this case to show the context and what was truly happening on these days that the prosecution is going to try to make you believe something more was happening. By way of example, the prosecution has one day where they claim Ethan needed help and Jennifer Crumbley was out with her horse. James Crumbley was with her at the barn. They had just gotten a new horse. Ethan is 15 years old at home, claiming there's a demon in the house, there's something going on, and the prosecution is going to try to use this one little point in time to convince you that Jennifer Crumbley was somehow neglecting her son. Much of the evidence in this trial is also going to center around James Crumbley, who is not on trial in this case. He has a separate trial, as Mr. Keese told you. You're going to hear evidence that James Crumbley and Ethan Crumbley liked guns. They had 3 guns, 2 guns that were purchased earlier in 2021, and a gun that was purchased at a Black Friday sale the day after Thanksgiving in 2021. You are going to hear evidence that James and Ethan went to the shooting range often, that James was responsible for storing the guns, and to be quite frank, Jennifer Crumbley didn't know anything about guns. Jennifer Crumbley, you will hear evidence, she went to the shooting range one time with James and the shooter, and she went a second time after the gun was bought. She was attempting to find a way to spend time with her son, who had just lost a dog, his friend had moved away from him. She's trying to find a way to connect to him. But on that day, when Jennifer Crumbley went to the shooting range, you will hear evidence that she didn't even know where the gun was or how to put it in the car. She had her husband prepare the gun to take it to the range. He had hid the gun in the bedroom of their home. The gun had a cable lock, a trigger lock in place. James Crumbley had the key to the trigger lock that kept the gun secure. James Crumbley used the trigger lock key, took the cable lock off, put the gun in the back of Miss Crumbley's car, Mrs. Crumbley simply drove to the gun range. You will see video of their experience at the gun range, and you will see that the shooter is the one showing Mrs. Crumbley how to use the gun at the range. And when they're done at the range, the gun was placed back in the back seat of the car, not back seat, but the back of an SUV. And Jennifer Crumbley drove home, and not being responsible for storing the gun and not even knowing where the gun specifically was placed, Jennifer Crumbley left the gun locked in the trunk, the back part of her SUV. And James Crumbley was responsible for getting the gun out, putting the trigger lock back on, storing the gun, and Mrs. Crumbley had nothing to do with that part of what happened. Over the next couple of days, this is right after Thanksgiving, the family is picking out their Christmas tree, talking about Christmas presents. There was certainly some sadness in the shooter's life, but nothing that would have amounted to any reason to believe he's going to shoot people or commit a school shooting. You will hear testimony that on the day of the shooting, Jennifer Crumbley went to work. She is essentially the breadwinner at this time. Mr. Crumbley was in between jobs. He's about to get a job offer. Mrs. Crumbley is trying to keep the household finances up. She's at work, and she finds out through an email and text message that her son has drawn this alarming drawing the prosecution put on the screen. Jennifer freaks out when she sees the drawing. You will see the text messages that show she's urgently texting her husband, emergency, call me now, and she races out of work and goes to the school. Upon arriving at the school, she meets with Sean Hopkins, the school counselor. She meets with Nick Ejak, the school principal, and she meets with James Crumbley and the shooter. And they are all in a room together where the shooter explains why he has put together this drawing and what the drawing means. The family and the school talk about how a counselor would be a good idea for the shooter to get into some kind of counseling. The meeting is not nearly as severe as Mrs. Crumbley was initially expecting. Trained professionals at the school who evaluate children represent that the shooter is of no risk to anyone, and they allow him to stay in school. The testimony will show this is not a situation where Jennifer Crumbley refused to take her child from the school. She was provided the option of take him home or leave him here. The shooter struggled when they had online school during COVID. It caused him great anxiety to miss school, and he wanted to stay that day. The school was fine with it. Mrs. Crumbley did leave the school and left the shooter at the school, not knowing he was going to become the shooter within the next few hours. Jennifer Crumbley, the evidence is going to show you, returns to work, and suddenly there is news that there's an open shooter at Oxford. Jennifer Crumbley, it's not even on her radar that her son would be the one with the gun doing anything. Her immediate concern is that her son may be hurt. As she is driving to the school as fast as she can, she has conversations with her husband and becomes aware that the gun at their house is missing. And in Jennifer Crumbley's mind, and you will hear evidence of this, she believes that perhaps her son has done something stupid, like taken the gun and shot it in the air or done something. She knows he's still alive and believes that it's going to be okay, whatever's happened, they can cross that bridge. A little bit later, there's more conversations, and Mrs. Crumbley becomes concerned that the shooter is actually attempting suicide, and Jennifer Crumbley texts her son, "Ethan, don't do it." It still has not crossed her mind that he would ever shoot another person. Ultimately, Jennifer and James Crumbley are called to the substation where they learn that their son has become a school shooter and has shot people, and that there are fatalities. Jennifer Crumbley will tell you she still could not believe that was true, and went into a complete state of shock and despair and stress, and not knowing realizing her life and everyone's life was going to change. And her initial comments are about how could her son have ruined so many lives that day. Jennifer Crumbley sees her son at the substation, and for the first time, when he looks at her, his eyes looked black, and it was a son she did not recognize. Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley go back to their house where law enforcement execute a search warrant. Law enforcement takes their cell phones, which the Crumbleys handed over. The Crumbleys have to go and buy burner phones or track phones so they have something to use to be in touch. They begin to realize that there are death threats around their house. People are planning riots around their house, and they cannot be in their home. Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley drive to a hotel where they spend the night. They are trying to figure out what is happening, and all Jennifer can think about are the things she believes she can control, like keeping her job, keeping health insurance, figuring out money, figuring out lawyers, and trying to digest what has just absolutely tragically unfolded. In the days following the event, while the prosecution says the evidence will show Jennifer Crumbley is lying, Jennifer Crumbley is truthfully telling the world she had no idea, and finding out that she is about to be charged in this Band-Aid effort by the prosecution with involuntary manslaughter. Jennifer and James Crumbley go to the bank. They're advised by friends and family, and you will hear testimony that their money could all be taken out of their accounts, and they know they need money to be able to live and hire lawyers and figure out what to do. They withdraw all of the money from their bank account. The burner phones they're using, they can't get access to any of their accounts because of this two-part authentication you now have to do. So they go to the Metro PCS store where they buy new telephones that they can actually use to access their social media, their accounts, their contacts, and they end up with multiple cell phones. After that, they work to find lawyers. They don't know what to do. They don't understand what they're being charged with. They're under the stress of knowing their son is gone, and life will never be the same, undoubtedly. And on Friday, December 3rd, the Crumbleys find out when a press conference is held that they are being charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. And at that point, they attempt to try to figure out what to do, where to stay, where to go, what to do. And they ultimately ask a friend if they can stay at his art studio until they know where to go and what to do. They make plans to turn themselves into the court on Saturday morning, because remember, this is late in the day Friday. Saturday morning at 8:30 when the court opens up and does weekend arraignments. And overnight, the prosecutor's office, the sheriff's department, the fugitive apprehension team, the US Marshals have a statewide search claiming that James Crumbley and Jennifer Crumbley are on the lam, they are running, they are fleeing, they are trying to avoid charges, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. They are at their friend's art studio, they are waiting for instructions, and they are waiting to turn themselves in first thing Saturday morning when arraignments take place at the court. James and Jennifer Crumbley are sleeping on a mattress in the middle of the night. When police locate them, you will hear evidence. They're not really hiding. They're standing outside their car, their vehicle, smoking cigarettes. They're standing outside their car, talking on the telephone. They're communicating with various people they know. There's absolutely no evidence to suggest that they're fleeing. You will see body camera footage where when police come into the art studio to find them dead asleep on this mattress, they are cooperative, they are taken into custody, and they are arrested. The prosecution has grossly misconstrued facts in this case, and I ask that you wait to make any judgment until all of the evidence has been presented and you have seen every detail of it, including Jennifer Crumbley's testimony, and she is going to take the stand and tell you about her life with her son, about the day he became the shooter, and about the day he did something she could have never anticipated or fathomed or predicted. She will tell you that when she saw the materials in this case, she learned that her son had not been her son for months, that he had been manipulating her, that he had been hiding things from her, that he had been sending text messages, alarming text messages to other people. You will hear that the school never advised Mrs. Crumbley of problematic issues that if she had heard about, she would have jumped right on top of it. Despite the fact, the evidence will show that Mrs. Crumbley is on power schools, managing missing assignments by her son in his grades. The school never told her about times the shooter was trying to sleep in class, about a test he had failed, about the shooter being called to the office. She was never informed. You will hear testimony. She was never informed that the shooter wrote an autobiographical get to know you poster where he says he feels terrible and his family's a mistake. The school never notified Mrs. Crumbley of this. You will hear testimony that the school never notified Mrs. Crumbley that the shooter was having a, quote, rough time when he spoke to the school counselor. You will hear testimony that the school never notified Ms. Crumbley that previous work found in the shooter's files showed that it leaned a little bit towards the violent side. You will hear testimony that the school never told Mrs. Crumbley about an index card the shooter wrote in class that had odd responses with a drawing of a loaded gun magazine and a person holding it out. You will hear that Mrs. Crumbley was never told much of the information the school had. And so when the prosecution is urging you not to assign fault to anyone else, at the end of the day, we ask that you pay attention to the evidence that Mrs. Crumbley knew. And quite frankly, when you evaluate that evidence and know what she knew and what she didn't know, and learn the context behind the slivers of evidence this prosecution's presenting, you will see that this was absolutely not foreseeable. This was absolutely not expected. And I am going to ask that you find Jennifer Crumbley not guilty of involuntary manslaughter.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Can you tell me who the first witness is? I'm gonna ask the jury if they need a break. Do you need a break? I knew I shouldn't have given them coffee. Okay, so we'll take like a 10-minute break and then we'll hear the first witness, okay?
All right, for the jury. All right. They go differently.
Yeah, we're, all right, you may be seated. Who's the first witness? Okay, does she need to go downstairs or not?
Your Honor, I need to run to the bathroom. Do you need to go to the bathroom? She's okay unless the deputies, I think they need to take her downstairs.
I don't think you have to take her downstairs at every break, do you? I don't know.
It just gives her a chance to also use the bathroom. So
Oh, no, I want
to interrupt as many times.
Oh, yeah, I want her to be comfortable, so whatever she needs.
She does not need to use the restroom.
Okay, it's up to you, it's up to you.
We'll just take it downstairs and just use
You have a taser and a gun, so I'm not gonna tell you.
it. It's a lot of paperwork.
Your Honor, what time are we planning to be back?
Just by 10 o'clock, okay?
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
I'll be back.
brief. I'd like to go quickly, so whatever you guys wanna do, okay?
All right.
So, 5 and 6. Can you slide over some, please? Yeah.
Okay. I'll try to find the other shirt. But this one is right? This one? Yeah. Okay, that's why I said that. Okay. The tank top. Why on the makeup shirt? Yeah, it's acceptable. The tank top. Okay, okay, okay. We're trying like our, that's so yours from the box. Were they? Yes. Okay, good. Okay. Oh, Elena, have you met John? No, I haven't. Elena, this is John. Elena's my paralegal that did all this and has everything in place. So she's fantastic. I had her come with me today because they didn't tell me what they're doing, and so I was like, I gotta bring it all in. And Elena was just like fantastic. So she pushed us so hard. And yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay. I was reading about the origins of this color.
All rise, court is now in session.
So,
What do you do with the past hearings?
They always go away, I have no idea. Do you want me to go? I'll go grab
The
them.
deputies,
Okay. They keep running away, I'm not gonna bite them, I promise.
they're probably scaring you.
Maybe.
They're coming down the hall.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I hope it's okay with you that we just like stay.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to take long breaks, but I don't want to, make them sit there for hours on end if they're uncomfortable, so.
We don't have a room, so we're like happy here.
We offered to find you one.
Yeah, we're happy here.
Okay.
We're happy. We're good.
All right.
You did offer, thank you.
Are you ready for the jury? Yeah, okay.
All rise for the jury.
It's probably late to tell you this, but there's a little step there. I found that out the hard way in the dark the first time I came here, so be careful. All right, you may be seated.
Your Honor, calling people versus Jennifer Crumbley, case number 222799990 FH.
Thank you, Marquise. On behalf of people, Karen McDonald is here as well.
And thank you, I'm Shaylin Smith on behalf of Jennifer Crumbley.
Sean Godwin.
Who's the first witness?
Molly Darnell.
Okay.
Ms. McDonald is here from Illinois.
Your Honor, just before, I'll just hold off.
I'm sorry?
There's one exhibit that the prosecution is going to introduce that I'm going to object to. I just want to let the court know.
Do you know what number it is?
I do. It is number 7.
Are you stipulating to the admission of the other ones or not?
Yes.
I know we were going to talk about this at
Yes.
some point.
Yes, I believe that Ms. Darnell's exhibits 5, 6, and 8, and we have no objection to those. 7 we do, and I believe that's already been a ruling by the court. I just have to continue my objection.
Okay, so this was ruled on previously.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so 7 was already admitted in a written opinion.
It was,
right?
Judge.
Okay.
I just have to maintain my objection.
Sure.
Thank
sure.
you.
Okay.
For the record, that is a portion of the Oxford High School surveillance footage.
Correct. Okay.
And for the record, we just think it's not necessary.
All right. All right. Could you step forward? Could you raise, it's all cozy in here, I apologize. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth, so help you God? Yes. Okay, you can be seated. And then could you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
My name is Molly Darnell, MOLLY DARNELL.
Go ahead, prosecutor.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm going to call you Molly. I assume that's okay.
That's okay.
Okay. Molly, can you tell the jury what your profession is?
I'm an educator.
Where is it? Are you a teacher?
I am a teacher.
Okay. And who is your employer?
Oxford Schools.
Okay. How long have you been in? How long have you worked for Oxford Schools?
I started working for Oxford in the fall of '98.
Okay. Would that be your entire career?
That is my entire career.
Okay. And you stayed in that one school district?
Correct.
Okay. Your current position is what?
I work for Oxford Virtual Academy.
All right. And when did you begin that position?
I began that position 18 months ago.
Okay. I'm going to take you back to November 30th of 2021. Can you tell the jury what your position was at that time?
At that time in Oxford, I was under teacher contract, but I was the ELA coach and the International Baccalaureate coordinator. So I worked specifically with curriculum and teachers, like instructional moves in the classroom.
Okay,
So
so,
ELA, what's ELA?
I'm sorry, thank you. It's English Language Arts.
all right, thanks, George. So how much contact did you have with students compared to teachers at that point?
I would say minimal in comparison to teachers.
All right, and you did though spend some time in the classroom in your career?
Absolutely, yes. I spent the majority of my career in the classroom.
So on that day, what was your typical day like around that time in that position?
So in that position, I would work with building kind of professional development opportunities, or I was working with teachers individually. On that day in particular, I was working with the media specialist and my other coaching colleagues, my other instructional coaching colleagues on building professional development for the next day.
All right, did you have a classroom?
I had an office that I shared with two other individuals, and it was like half a classroom, but it was in the educational hallway.
So it was a classroom made into two offices?
Mhm.
Okay. Can you tell the jury when classes began that morning? What was the schedule of the day? Began and end, if you remember.
So you're referring to like the start day of the school
Yes.
day? The school day started around 7:30 and ended around 3 o'clock.
And I know Oxford had a different, they didn't have exactly the same schedule every day.
Yeah, we had a rotating 7, so we met 6 days a week. We met 6 classes a day. But we had 7 classes, so the students only were there in every single class for 4 hours
All right.
a week.
Can you tell the jury what passing time is?
Passing time was about, Oxford's one of the larger high schools in the state. It's the largest single floor high school in the state, I think, at the time.
Do
And
you
so
know how many students?
I off the top of my head, I don't.
Okay.
And so there were about 8 minutes between passing times, or between passing.
All right. November 30th, 2021, were there any COVID protocols still in place?
Yes, we were still in masks at that point in time, yes.
And were lockers being used?
Lockers were not being used.
Okay, so how were the kids getting their things from class to class?
They were carrying book bags.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as people's proposed Exhibit 5. I don't believe there's an objection, Your Honor.
That's
When I-
correct, Your Honor.
When I say I'm going to show you, it's going to be on this screen and this screen.
5 submitted.
Okay. Molly, what is that?
That's the layout of the high school.
All right, so that's a map of the school.
Correct.
Okay. And can you tell me where your classroom / office was?
So if you're looking at that yellow portion, I am, thank you. I am where you see 222, and then there's 226. I'm that little sliver right in between there, and that was 224.
Okay, Mark's gonna show you
Yep.
on the map. He's
Correct.
not letting me have access to the clicker for the trial, so we're relying on him. Okay, so is that your classroom?
Yes, that like little sliver where you can see, it looks like a bunch of names are written in there.
Mm-hmm.
That was the room that I was in, yes.
Okay, and I'm gonna take you to around the time of about 12:50.
Okay.
What were you doing during that time?
So on that day, the year prior, I was in the classroom, and I had a student who popped by around that time just to check in and wanted to chat. I had a chat with her. There was, I believe it was the beginning of passing that she stopped by. We had a quick little chat.
Was that conversation in your
It was in the
office or in the
office.
hallway?
Yep, it was in the office.
Was the door open or closed?
The door was open.
Okay.
We had a little chat. She left. I was alone in the office. And passing was still happening. So I moved to my my desk space just to check some emails, check on a couple of things.
Okay, so your desk was in the back of the classroom?
Yeah, it was towards the back side, yes,
Facing the door?
facing the door.
Okay.
Correct.
And did you have a practice of what you did during passing time?
So sometimes I would go out in the hall and check, like just to check and see what was going on, or I might chat with the teacher or two. I didn't on that day because it was towards the end of passing time, and so I knew things would be wrapping up and teachers would be heading back to their classes.
Okay. So at some point, did you see or hear anything unusual?
Yeah, so all of a sudden I could hear a commotion in the hallway, and I looked up from my laptop, and I see a bunch of kids running through the hallway. It was a pack of kids, and they were moving pretty quickly, and there was a commotion around it. I couldn't tell if it was like excited, that it was like higher pitched though. And it was almost like some of the kids' hands were extended, like they were trying to move really quickly.
Okay, for the record, you have your hands, both your hands up, shoulder distance. Okay, and that seemed unusual to you?
It did.
Okay, did it seem unusual because it was at the end of passing time, or just because of the movement and the sound?
It was the movement, it was the sound, it was the large bulk of kids that were moving.
What did you do?
I exited my office. I believe that there was possibly a fight. So I run out of my office. I'm about midway through where 222 is. And I see all those kids exiting out of door 4. So I know there's not a fight.
So if you look at the map, you come out of your classroom and you look down the hallway and they're all running out of the school?
Yeah, on a door 4.
Okay, and that was unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, I had never seen that before.
All right. And then what happened?
I paused for a second because I'm thinking like, well, what's going on, right? I don't know what's happening. I head back into my office space. The hallway is completely clear. And I walk into my office and I'm like, all right, what could possibly be happening in this moment?
Was it unusual for the hallway to be completely clear?
I don't believe the bell had rung yet, so
Okay.
that was unusual.
Okay. And so what did you do?
It was in pausing, trying to like gather what to do next. I heard 3 things pretty quickly together, like so quickly together that I have a hard time distinguishing what came first and what came last. But there were the sound of like 3 like loud pops that I could have mistaken for lockers closing if we were using lockers.
Okay. So when you heard the 3 pops, what did you think that sound was?
Well, again, there was doors started slamming. I could hear like boom, 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 boom. And then the principal at the time, Steve Wolf, came over the PA and said, we're heading into lockdown. This is not a drill.
And how long had you known Steve?
So a couple years at that point in time.
Okay. Did his voice sound panicked?
His voice sounded, it was like urgent, but you could tell he was like tempering any, like panic.
So was that before the loud pops or after, if you can remember?
Honestly, I cannot remember.
Okay. When you heard this, was your door open or closed?
My door, when I came back in, I pulled it, but it didn't shut, so it was open a couple inches.
Okay. So what did you do?
At that point in time, I moved to shut my door.
Okay. Did you, after the pop, did you smell anything?
No.
Did you see anything?
No.
All right. Then you tell the jury what happened when you turned around and headed to the door.
So I walked to the door. I immediately pull it shut. To the left of my door, so my door was here and there was a glass part, like, floor to ceiling glass. And then right here was a night lock system.
Can you tell the jury what a night lock system is?
So a night lock is a simple gadget that goes into the door, that goes into the floor, so that if the door were unlocked, it's like a second security measure. If the door was not locked, or even if it was, someone can't get in. So if the glass is shut out, even if they're trying to undo the door, they can't open the door.
And when did you learn about night locks?
Maybe 4 years prior.
Okay. Did you do that? Well, why did you install the night lock?
Well, one, I was directed that we're in lockdown,
Okay.
right? So as soon as I knew that we're in lockdown, that's what you do.
Were you able to install the night lock?
So I grabbed the night lock, I undid the piece, grabbed it, and looked down at it. So I also, some of the doors have different installs, whether the door goes, in or out from the room. And so I looked at it to see, just to remind myself which one, because the other office that I have at the middle school, or had at the middle school at the time, had a different.
At this point, Molly, the door is shut or closed?
The door is shut.
Are you facing the door or facing away?
I'm facing the door, so I'm close enough to that wall because I had just grabbed it.
Do you know about what the distance was between you and that door?
Not even a foot.
Okay. And then what happened?
I look at it, and out of my peripheral vision, I can see some sort of movement. And so I look up, and I see someone dressed in dark, oversized clothing.
And you're looking through that glass pane next to your door, okay?
They have the mask on, a hat, glasses, and a hood. And I lock eyes with them.
Had you ever seen that person before?
I had not, no.
Did you know if it was a student or is that a no?
I did not know if it was a student.
All right. And you said you locked eyes?
I locked eyes. And then instantly I see some movement. And so I look down, and I realize he's raising a gun to me.
Okay. Can you describe?
Yeah, the gun was black, and I remember thinking, because he's raising the gun to me, that there was no orange tip. I'd heard prior that BB guns have an orange tip.
When you say he was raising the gun, can you explain what that looked like? Was it one arm or two arms?
Well, I just saw the one starting to move up. I saw the gun, and I moved.
Which way did you move?
I moved away from the glass partition, away from the door, toward back into the room.
Okay. You just described you saw something in your peripheral vision. You looked up. You locked eyes.
I locked eyes. He didn't hesitate.
Okay. About how long was that from the time you saw the peripheral vision and then the gun was raised?
A second.
Okay.
If that.
When you locked eyes with this individual, what did you see?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Describe that for me.
I lock eyes with him, and I instantly see that movement. And I jump to the side.
Okay. What happened after you jumped to the side?
As I jump,
And was did you ever get the night lock installed at that
the
point?
night lock is not installed at this point.
Okay.
So when I move, I kind of jump and turn my body this way at the same time.
Okay, and for the record, you're motioning, turning your
Yeah.
shoulders to the right.
To the right.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my left shoulder moves back a bit, and I feel a burn like hot water had stung me.
Where did you feel that?
In my arm,
Which arm?
in my left arm.
Okay, and you're pointing to your
Yeah.
right below your shoulder?
Yep.
Okay. And are you standing up? Are you sitting down? Are you?
I'm standing up at this point in time. I feel that hot burn go through my arm. And I turn back. There was a window in the back of my room that leads out to the courtyard. And I see a bullet hole.
Okay, I'm going to show you on the screen what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 6.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
6 is admitted.
What is that, Molly?
That's the office that I shared.
Okay, and that, can you just describe where the desk is, where what you just described and point that out? You said
Yep.
you turned around to the back of the classroom.
Yep, so you can see on that window exiting, there's a white mark.
Right there?
Yep, that would be the bullet hole.
Did you, is that what you noticed when you turned around?
That is what I noticed when I turned around, correct.
Okay. At this point, what were you thinking?
A BB gun can't do that. It seems like really silly.
What seems silly?
That I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening.
I mean, after you felt the warmth and you still were thinking it might be a BB gun.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you do? Is the night lock installed at this point?
The night lock's not installed at this point, and the only thing I'm thinking is I have to barricade this door. Like there was instinct that kicked in. So what you can't see is right around that corner, there was this huge filing cabinet.
And I think if we can point, so to the, around that corner to,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I grab it because I'm afraid to go back towards the door at this point in time. And I try to move it, thinking maybe I can pull it out enough and push it. And it was just too heavy for me. So that rolling cart was sitting next to it. That's when I pulled out the rolling cart and no, sorry, I take that back.
It's
I
okay,
didn't do that yet.
Take your time.
I crawled down on my hands and knees and I put that night lock in. And then I moved for the rolling. I was like, I just have to keep barricading. And so I grabbed the rolling cart.
Is the object in the,
Yeah, you
In the
can see it's
picture?
the little red object on the rolling cart. Yep.
oh, that's the night lock. Okay, but that, it's sitting on that's the rolling cart, right?
Correct.
All right, and were you able to put it in front of the door?
I was able to put the rolling cart in front of the door, correct.
Okay, and then what did you do?
Then the only thing I can think of is he's gonna come back and finish what he wanted to do.
Could you hear anything else in the hallway?
At this point, I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. And so what did you do?
So I go back to that large cabinet because I know if I'm anywhere in the back of this room, he can see. So I need to hide in this front corner. And so I pull that large filing cabinet back just enough to crawl behind it so that if he comes to that window, he can't see where I'm at.
So the way the classrooms are is you have to be at a certain angle to see certain parts of the room from the hallway, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you said you moved to that corner behind because what?
Because I didn't want him to see where I was at.
Okay. Once you were behind the cabinet, were you sitting?
I was crouched down. I was trying to make myself as small as possible. Right, I got really low. I was on my bottom, crouched as close together physically as I could make myself.
Okay. What did you do next?
I had texted my husband, "I love you, active shooter." And then I started feeling blood dripping down my arm.
What did you do?
At
At this point, had you registered that you had been shot?
I don't think I was registering that I was shot. I just knew that I was bleeding.
Okay. What did you do?
I had a cardigan on that day, and so you can see in the photo there's this red little bag on the side, on the right side of the wall. Those are medical response bags that we keep in every room. So if someone's bleeding or if a tourniquet's needed, they're in there, but I was too afraid to go back and grab it. So at that point, I knew I needed to put a tourniquet on. I knew I was bleeding. I I removed my cardigan and I used one of the sleeves of the arm, wrapped it up on top and pulled with one arm, my teeth with the other, to tighten it.
And Molly, how many inches down was that wound?
It sits right here.
Okay, and you brought a cardigan so that you could show the jury what that looks like, so they know exactly where you were hit?
Yep.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you can all see okay, but.
You can step down if you feel comfortable doing
Can
so.
everyone see?
I just make it see, yeah.
So you can see it kind of sits in the back, so when I was turned, that was the entrance and the exit.
And there's 2 holes there.
Yep, so it entered here, it exited here, and the space in between, the heat of the bullet cauterized,
The skin?
the skin.
Okay, you can sit back down. You put the tourniquet where on your shoulder?
I put it above the wound.
Okay. How'd you know how to do that?
We go through trainings, once a year regarding, what to do.
Okay.
You know, in the situation.
What happened next?
I put the tourniquet on, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, what do I do next? What's like the next move here? And my daughter texts me. She didn't go to Oxford High School, but she went to a neighboring school district. And they had heard through social media that there was a shooting at Oxford High School. And so she sent me a message that just said, Mom, are you okay? And I responded to her that I love you. I'm sheltered in place. And I'm fine.
You didn't tell her you were hit?
I did not tell her I was shot, no.
Molly, I want to go back, and I'm so sorry. When the shooter raised his hand, what were your what did you notice about, if you noticed anything about his stance, or you said you locked eyes?
Yeah, his feet were set about hip distance apart. And that's, you know, he was, and his shoulders were like, he was square, right? He was square.
How long were you in that classroom?
I was in there for about 20 minutes.
Were you communicating with anyone else in the school, or law enforcement or administration?
No, there were a couple teachers. My hallway had a text thread, and that was not active. There was nobody texting on that. But another part of the building where the English Language Arts Department is at, they were texting. And one of them said, I heard there was a shooter. And I responded that I saw one.
Did you respond that I've been shot?
I did not.
Why is that?
I think I didn't want to like create panic. Like I wanted to make sure that people knew it was serious, but there's no, like, I'm okay.
Okay. At this point, did you have any idea where the shooter was, if anyone else had been hurt? What were you hearing? Anything?
Nothing. And it was absolute silence for a long time. And then I started to hear a volume of footsteps. And I thought, they must be evacuating a classroom. And so when that shift occurred, I texted the teacher next door and I said, hey, you're the only one that knows right now, but I've been shot. I hope I'm the only one.
How long was that? How long were you in the room?
At that point, it was probably 18 minutes.
Okay. At some point, did somebody ask you to leave the classroom?
Yes, so the teacher next door was like, oh my gosh, I'm calling the office. There was another teacher in the room with her who texted administration.
Okay. And at some point, did somebody come to the door?
Yep, so the text from administration, Kurt Noose was at my door within maybe 2 minutes. Time's hard on that. And he was like knocking, Molly, are you in there? I've known Kurt Noose since they started in Oxford. I did not trust that was him at my door.
What were you afraid that it was?
I don't know. Everything that I knew to be reality wasn't.
So did you answer him back, or did you open the door, or did you just remain silent?
I said, I'm in here, and he said, are you okay? I don't remember how I responded. It was within a second or two that then there were police at the door, and they were like, are you in here? Are you injured? I said, yes. And then I said, do you want me to, it was clear that they wanted me to, like, they were there for me.
And they couldn't just open the door.
They can't just open that door. That night lock prevents them from getting in the door.
And Molly, if you know, how would you get into that room if someone doesn't remove the night lock from the inside? Is there a way?
So I know there's a special tool to use, but you'd have to take everything off that door, and that's all steel.
So the frame, actually.
Yes.
Okay. And so they were asking you to remove the night lock. Did you do that?
I said, do you want me to remove the night lock? And they said, yes, remove the night lock. And then I said, do you want me to open the door? And they said, yes, open the door. And I'm down on the ground while I'm doing all of this. Like, I'm removing the night lock and I'm opening up the door from my knees. And they like scoop me up. And I can see the two officers that scoop me up, but I can see Kurt standing there against the lockers. And I can see 4 cops with guns.
Did you see any students?
I did not see any students, no.
Okay, Molly, I'm gonna play a surveillance, which is marked People's Exhibit 7, which I know there's an objection to, but the judge has previously ruled. Just to let the jury know, you're not gonna see any victims in this, except for Molly, nor are you going to see any students.
Can everybody see?
While he's getting that on the monitor, when you say you saw 2 officers with guns, how far away were they? And were they in the same direction?
They were. When they scooped me up, the 2 that scooped
me up. Okay, I'm gonna stop you. Look here. Yep. Is that the hallway?
That's the hallway.
Okay.
So you can see there's multiple around. So it wasn't just the 2.
Where's your classroom in this photo?
It's farther down, right? So you can see, like they're going inwards towards the classroom.
Okay.
It looks like that's an officer there.
Okay.
So I knew that they were officers based on the vests that they were wearing. And so they were just around, right, as well, like securing the area, I suppose.
All right, can you press play? Is that you, Molly?
That is me.
At this point, are you hearing anything in the building?
No, everything is silent, like almost like it's like echoey. It's so silent.
Okay, now you can see through that glass door. Is that you?
That is me.
What's happening?
He's removing the self-made tourniquet from my cardigan. He's putting on an actual tourniquet.
Okay, and at some point you get into an ambulance, correct?
Yes, so at this point, he says, I'm gonna radio to see if there's an ambulance available for you. Making sure that no one else needed it ahead of me.
Okay. You eventually get into an ambulance. They take you where?
They took me to Lapeer.
What happened when you got there?
So I get to Lapeer, and the doctor comes out to the ambulance and introduces himself. And they said, I was sitting in the ambulance the entire time, and then they said, we're gonna put you on the gurney. And I said, I can walk. Like, if I can walk, I wanna walk. And so they helped me out of the ambulance, and I walk in, and they're like steadying, you know, like kind of almost holding me up, steadying me. And the hallways are lined with doctors and nurses.
Did you see any other victims?
I did not, no.
Okay. And they treated your wound?
They did.
Okay. Were you able to, I assume they ran some tests. I want to be cognizant of the judge's prior ruling about what you can testify to. But at what point, how long were you at the hospital?
I have no idea what time I walked in those doors.
Okay.
I was there for several hours.
Did you learn at some point there were other victims?
I did ask when I was in the hospital, is anybody else been injured? And I was, you know, I was told that there were other victims and a few fatalities, yes.
Okay, at some point did you hear a teacher was shot?
I did.
And what did you think?
I instantly thought it was another one of my colleagues. I knew the direction that I saw him turn, so I knew what direction he came.
And who was the teacher, Molly?
I thought it was Lauren Jasinski that was shot.
But who was the teacher they were referring to?
It was me.
At some point, you were shown weeks later a picture of your doorway.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Okay, do you remember who showed that to you?
No.
Okay, was it me?
I did. Well, I did see. I did see it in your office. Yes.
Okay, when you were preparing to testify.
Yes.
I'm gonna put that picture on the screen. It's People's Exhibit 8. I don't think there's a objection.
Any objection?
There's no objection.
8 submitted.
Molly, is that your classroom door?
That is my. Yes.
Okay. What was your reaction when you saw that?
He was aiming to kill me.
Do you know which one of those shots landed in your shoulder?
I don't. I have no idea which one landed on my shoulder, but I know the top one. That's where my head would have been, and the two down below are my chest area.
Okay.
I unlocked that door every day.
And what was your, did you have some, what is your, when you think about the wound and why you weren't hit, why was it? In the chest?
That door, the distance, the door, and me moving was the only reason that I'm alive.
How many inches from your heart was that, that injury to your shoulder?
The actual wound is 6 inches, but my turn might have made it less.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Ross? I have no questions further.
Can this witness be excused, Your Honor?
Yes, please. You can step down and you're excused. All right. Who's the next witness?
Christy Gibson Marshall.
Okay, and We had a discussion about the boundaries of her testimony. I don't know if we put that on the record. Do we need to or not?
We've prepared her, Your Honor.
Okay,
We understand it's not a Miller hearing, we know it's a trial.
okay, all right. The media is asking whether or not they can videotape tape the video. I don't see a reason why they can't, right?
No, there's no minors.
Oh, okay, I want to make sure.
Judge, actually, this one, in this portion.
Oh, yes, in this portion. We'll indicate which,
Right.
which, videos can be shown.
Okay. Yeah, give them a heads up so they know.
I'm mostly concerned with giving a heads up to the jury so everyone's prepared.
And then, Your Honor, again, the defense objects to, I believe it's just one exhibit you're using with Ms. Gibson.
Oh, with this witness?
I believe it's only exhibit
No.
9.
Yeah.
And
With
you-
it, this was previously extensively briefed.
Yes.
And, I made a red ruling about it, yeah. But your objections are good.
Thank you.
There's people called Christy Gibson Marshall.
Good morning. Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give is the truth so help you God? All right, please be seated, and then would you state your name for the record and spell your first and last name?
Christy Gibson Marshall, KRISTY-GIBSON-MARSHALL.
Go ahead, prosecutor.
Thank you. Good morning. May I call you Christy?
Yes,
Christy, could you please tell the jury where you're employed?
Oxford Community Schools,
How long have you been with Oxford?
29 years,
And what do you do right now?
I'm an assistant principal
Okay. And that's at the high school?
at high school,
How long have you been the assistant principal at the high school?
6 years.
And what did you do before that?
I was an elementary principal,
Also in Oxford District?
yes.
Now, if you could tell the jury a little bit about your role as an assistant principal. What are some of your responsibilities?
Teacher supervision, evaluation, curriculum and instruction, supervising, I do parent communications. It's hard to think of all the stuff that's my big giant list while I'm sitting here, but we have a student relations team that works together to support our alphabet, part of the alphabet. We big goal is, like, to me, my biggest role is supporting students and I love the kids, so just bringing energy and having fun with them.
You've been in education, you said, for 29 years?
Yeah, yes.
So prior, up until this role, you were an elementary school principal?
I was, and then prior to that, I was a teacher.
Teacher before that, okay. Now, as it happens, the school that you were principal at was Jennifer Crumbley's son, one of those students.
Yes,
And what grades, if you recall, was he there?
4th and 5th.
Did you have any contact with him in your role as a principal in those 4th and 5th grade years? Did you have any contact with his mother or father?
Not that I remember. I had an email about a report card once, but that's all I remember.
And that would have been years prior?
Like 5th grade going to 6th.
Now, I'd like to direct your attention to November the 30th of 2021, about 12:50 in the afternoon. So we have the screen in front of you. That should be displaying People's Exhibit 5. This is a map of the Oxford High School.
Yes.
If you could tell us, if you recall, where you were about 12:50 in the afternoon that day.
I was in the cafeteria. I started in the cafeteria supervising lunches. So what would be, I guess, they're the commons.
So right
Yes,
here?
correct.
Okay. So was that lunchtime while you were there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
And is there a time where you moved? So around that time on November the 30th, did you have a specific area of the school you would go to, or did you move around?
We didn't have an assigned area, but I like to go to the senior courtyard after lunches and just kind of help see that courtyard area.
Okay.
The hallway out in front of this courtyard area between where you see 400 and 401.
Okay.
Our seniors hang out there and they congregate in a good way, not terrible. Let me just clarify. It's kind of like their rite of passage, and we just like to kind of go there and keep traffic flowing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that something you would do on a routine basis?
Yeah. My bad mom joke on that one is that I make it a senior citizen window and I stand in that area.
Was there a point that day when you realized something was going wrong?
When I was approaching the senior courtyard, so when I was coming down the hallway from the commons, what says commons, I call it cafeteria, by the media center, by the courtyard, and hit the 500 room. When I kind of got to that triangle there, that diamond there, one of the students that I know pretty well went running by and said, "Get the hell out of here." And he was laughing and running, and I was like, that was a mixed message.
Sure. At that point, was there an announcement on the loudspeaker?
No, not at that point, no.
Okay.
No.
Was he the only one running?
Shortly after him, there was a group of kids laughing and running behind him. When I stopped to ask them what was going on, they weren't entirely sure. But as kids started to pass, you could see it got more serious.
Okay.
I grabbed my walkie-talkie and I
What do you mean it got more serious? What do you mean by that?
their faces got more, I'm sorry, their faces became more serious.
Okay. Did that signify something to you when you saw that?
Yeah, just something, them running signified something to me because it's not a typical behavior.
Okay.
But the running and laughing was confusing, and then when their faces became more serious, I was started to get very worried, and that's when I grabbed my walkie-talkie.
What did you do with your walkie-talkie?
I said, I'm not sure what's happening, but kids are running in the hallway, which is very odd, and look like they're trying to leave the building.
So where did you go?
They shortly after I got on the walkie, they went to Alice Alert, and so
What's Alice Alert?
Alice Alert is our intruder. I'm going to call it an intruder alert because that's what it was that day. But it's a notice that we need to take cover, lock down, be aware. It's
So is
an
that
emergency assistance.
an alarm ringing, or is that somebody who's giving a message over the PA system?
On that day, it was a message over the PA system.
Do you recall who gave that message?
Steve Wolf.
Who was that?
Steve is our principal.
Who's the principal? Okay. So is this shortly after you saw the students leaving that appeared to be more serious to you?
Practically the same. Yeah, it was like they went, when the more serious students came by, the announcement went on.
Okay. Now, when you hear that announcement, what were you supposed to do?
Supposed to walk down.
Did you?
No.
What did you do?
I went to check the hallways to make sure people were okay.
When you first started to check the hallways, did you see anybody?
The hallways cleared so fast. When I made the turn down the 400 hallway, I ran into a teacher who was locking his door, and then a student came up who was running late. He asked if it was a drill. I let him know that it didn't matter if it was a drill or not, just you gotta get covered in there. And then I proceeded down the hallway. I was the only one in the hallway at that point.
Did you hear anything?
First, I smelled something. I smelled what I thought was cap gun.
Okay.
Later, figured out was gunpowder. And then I heard two gunshots.
Where were you when you first smelled what you thought to be cap gun?
Probably by like the somewhere between 409 and 414.
So you were continuing to walk down that hallway, the 400 hallway, towards the 200 hallway. That's in yellow highlight.
Yes, that's where I heard the gunshots. I was going that direction.
You were walking towards the gunshots.
Yep. Yes.
As you walked down the hallway, did you see anybody else?
No.
Tell me where you went.
When I got to the end of the hallway, I realized how dumb this is. I turned left to go towards where I heard the gunshots.
So this hallway,
And I went towards 225.
so you came down the 400 hallway and you turned left towards 225.
Yes.
Tell us what you saw when you made a left.
I saw a student laying on the ground.
Did you know who he was?
I didn't at that time, no.
Okay.
His face was covered. And then as I continued a couple of steps, I could see another student walking my direction. He had just dropped his arm was up and then he dropped his arm.
Did you recognize him?
Not at that point, no. He was too far away.
What did you do when you saw a student on the ground?
There was a garbage can between he and I, so I moved the garbage can out of the way. And I put my foot near him and nudged him and told him to stay there.
Did he respond?
No.
Could you tell if he was injured at that point?
You could tell he was injured.
What happened next?
Ethan then came into closer view, and I could tell it was Ethan.
He had been at the school where you were principal?
Yes.
Did you interact with him at all at Oxford High School?
Just normal, like how I interact with everybody, high fives, hugs, silly stuff that I do.
Okay.
I brought my elementary to the high school, so I just.
Did you say anything to him?
When he got close enough to me that we were sharing the hallway, so he was kind of walking down the center and I was kind of over to the side, so we're probably 3 feet apart. I asked him if he's okay. It just didn't seem right that it would be him.
So I need to back up just a little bit. When you saw, you didn't know who it was at first, a student down the hallway, you said he had lowered his arm.
I knew it was a shooter when he was down the hallway.
Okay. Could you see if he was holding anything?
I could see a gun.
At that point, was he walking towards you or away from you?
He was walking towards me. It was when I realized it was Ethan that I didn't think he could possibly be the shooter is what happened. I know I said I knew he was a shooter down there because I could rationalize that is a gun. He is putting that gun down. He just shot something.
Okay. Now, I know this is difficult, but I need you to use your teacher voice and speak
Okay.
as loud as you can. Thank you. You saw him coming towards you. How close, how far from him were you when you recognized who it was?
He was probably by the from 220 one when I could tell who he was.
Okay.
And I was standing between 226 and that white section there that, yeah. There's exit doors there.
Now, you said you said something to him?
Yeah, it seems so odd that it was him, so I said, buddy, are you okay? What's going on? And when he didn't respond to me and he looked away, that's when I knew it was him, that he was the shooter.
Did he point the gun at you?
He did not.
What did you do at that point?
I got on the walkie and I told my team that I have eyes on a shooter and I have a victim.
Now this hallway, 200 hallway, there's a curve to it.
Yes.
Okay. And he was walking, if we followed the mouse cursor here, he's walking down the 200 hallway towards 233 and 237?
Yeah, he was walking that direction.
That direction?
Yes.
Did you watch where he went?
No.
What did you do?
There was a student who was injured, so I went to him. I knew he needed.
And I know you're aware, but there's been certain rulings by the court, so just in general terms, did you render aid to that student?
I did.
Could you tell if he was injured at that point?
Yes.
Did you recognize him?
Yeah, I knew another one of my students from Lakeville. Tate near. Just took my breath away.
Were you were on the walkie-talkie, you said?
Yes. So I let them know I had eyes on the shooter and that I had a victim. Kurt News asked me where I was. It's probably the biggest hallway we have, and I said I was in the 200 hallway. Kurt let me know that that's a very big hallway and needed more direction. I don't know why I couldn't process the fact that, like, my exact location, I told him I was near the 400.
Okay. Did you stay with Tate until help arrived?
Yes.
Now, you have seen at least a portion of the Oxford High School surveillance video, is that right?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's 9. It's been admitted. It cannot be broadcast on the media.
All of it? I've never seen it, so you have to tell me.
Oh, the entire, this is a short clip of it. None of it can be broadcast.
Okay. You have, okay, so you guys are not video, okay. Everybody gets it? You're gonna stop the live stream? Should we stop the live stream?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Okay, all right.
I do want to give notice to juries.